Good morning. Trump's tariffs are nothing more than a national sales tax on working families. And because of that, Americans are waking up with less money in their retirement accounts, higher prices at the grocery store, and less confidence in the economy. That's what happens when Donald Trump governs by ego and congressional Republicans stand by and let it happen. These tariffs aren't part of any real economic strategy. They're just plain dumb because they hurt working families and there's no plan behind them. Trump's tariffs mean higher prices on everyday essentials, groceries, toys, clothing, appliances, you name it. It's on everything that a working family relies on. In LA, we're still recovering from the devastating wildfires and facing a deepening housing crisis. And you'll hear from my colleagues today, and they will share how these tariffs are hurting families in their own communities. Trump's tariffs will also make it more expensive to build and repair homes. Family-owned businesses, bakeries, and neighborhood markets will also take a hit. Rising food and supply costs will force small businesses to raise prices on consumers who are already struggling to get by. Even the toys we buy for our kids, many made outside of the United States, will cost more under Trump's plan. From the West to the East, the Midwest to the South, parents everywhere are already stretching every dollar just to get by. And Trump's tariffs don't help American workers. They just make life harder for the people we represent. And it's up to Congress to rein in these taxes on working families. That's why I'm standing with my fellow Dad Caucus members to speak out on behalf of working parents and to call on congressional Republicans to do their job and join us to reclaim our authority. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Representative Schneider, with not only a Dads Caucus member, but the head of the New Dems.
Thank you, Jimmy, and thank you for your leadership in bringing us together as dads. We're gathering here talking about what's on the minds of parents all across the nation right now. How they'll make sure they can keep a roof over their heads, put food on the table, save for their kids' future, as well as even their own retirement, and even how they'll care for their own parents as they begin to age. For families, Trump's trade war and his tariff tax are a five-alarm fire. Parents right now are already facing huge costs as they raise their kids with the crazy price of child care, expensive groceries, and skyrocketing college tuition. Instead of looking seriously at solutions that can help hardworking families not just get by, but get ahead, Trump is hitting them with a massive, probably the most extensive tax in U.S. history. The Yale Budget Lab estimates that Trump's tariffs will cost the average American family $3,800, almost $4,000. For many families, that's more than they make in an entire month. That's money they're relying on to pay for school supplies, lunches, daycare, birthday presents, afternoon snacks, and maybe even a trip to see their grandparents. Many of us up here right now know it's expensive to raise a kid. Well, Trump's tariff tax is going to make it much more expensive to raise those children. Toys, car seats, cribs, onesies, baby shoes, high chairs, everything you see on this table, we can expect to see the prices rise for all of the essential and already expensive goods. Diapers, we all know infants go through 7 to 10 diapers in a day. Trump just added a tax, a daily tax on diapers. American families deserve relief, but instead they're heading to the store in a panic to stock up on these supplies before the prices go up. Our Republican colleagues here in the House could put a stop to this today. They could stop it tomorrow. They could stand up and confront their president from unilaterally setting fire to our economy and creating what is certainly likely to be a self-inflicted recession. I join my colleagues in calling on Speaker Johnson to bring legislation to the floor that restores Congress's authority, constitutionally mandated trade authority, and puts the people back in the driver's seat. And it's now my privilege to turn over to my colleague, Representative Figures.
Good morning. These tariffs are yet another example of this administration acting without consideration of how it's going to impact everyday people across this country, most certainly not considering how it's going to impact the average person in my home state of Alabama. Just last year, Alabama exported over $10 million in automobiles manufactured across the state, including in Montgomery, Alabama, which is part of my congressional district. Well, a 25% tariff on this industry is crippling. It's something that's going to harm our ability to be able to maximize the impacts of this industry, one that the state of Alabama has grown to be a leader in this country for. This trickle-down effect is going to impact the ability of those companies to be able to hire workers, not only just the people ability to be able to afford the vehicles. I represent a state where, in a district where the individual median income is just north of $30,000, just north of $30,000. People cannot afford this tax on their life. People cannot afford to see almost every good that they rely on to be jacked up in prices. We simply cannot afford it in the state of Alabama. You know, these tariffs are estimated by some to be the largest tax at least since 1982, quite possibly in this history, in the history of this nation. We have never seen this type of recklessness before. We've never seen this type of disregard for the average everyday consumer in this country. Business owners are not going to just suck these expenses up. They will not. They're already saying, if I can't pay it, I'm going to have to pass it on. Well, that gets passed on to me. That gets passed on to people in Greenville, Alabama, and Evergreen, Alabama, and Mobile, Alabama, and Pritchard, Alabama. Some of the poorest people in this nation. They simply cannot afford what this administration is doing. Exports in the state of Alabama, things like shrimp and catfish and other, other foods. We simply cannot do it. We have an enormous agriculture industry in my state, and this is going to make it harder for those companies to succeed. And it's going to make it harder for people to get by every single day. And this is at a time where we are seeing this administration and our Republican colleagues, at the same time they're raising prices on Americans, they are seeking to take benefits away from the most needy Americans. They are proposing SNAP benefit cuts that are of a scale that's going to be disastrous for too many families. They are proposing taking health care away from the people that need it most. And so this is just adding insult to injury and something that we cannot afford to continue to be able to do. People need the government to be there for them. And I'm proud to stand with my colleagues here in the Dads Caucus to do just that, to advocate on behalf of the people that need it most, to advocate on behalf of families, to advocate on behalf of parents. And so with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague from the state of Nevada, Congressman Stephen Horsford.
Well, good morning. It's an honor to be here with my colleagues from the Dads Caucus. I want to thank Congressman Jimmy Gomez, also on the Ways and Means Committee, because we're just trying to bring attention to a very simple but true fact, and that is life is already too expensive for families, and dads are bearing a part of that brunt as well. Barely 2 months ago, Donald Trump inherited an economy at record highs. Back then, our allies still considered us friends, our trading partners still considered us trustworthy, and working families still had confidence in the future they were building for themselves and their loved ones. We're here right now, barely 2 months later, because none of that is true anymore. A tariff is a tax, and Donald Trump owns these erratic taxes. But here's the catch. A tariff is also a tool. They can be used to protect our workers and our communities. Trump's choosing to use them to crash our economy instead, and that is terribly unfortunate. This president campaigned in Nevada on lowering prices, but how's he governing? Groceries cost more, appliances will cost more, cars will cost more, clothing will cost more, and there are open discussions about a looming recession that wasn't even on the horizon when we started this year. There are studies that show that Trump's tariffs will cost the American family an average of about $3,800 in lost purchasing power each year. Nevadans expect competence from their government. Nobody is sitting around eager to waste or spend another $3,800 on Trump's trade war. In Las Vegas, we're already grappling with higher prices and a housing crisis. Housing prices dramatically outpace income growth. In fact, nearly half of all renters spend 35% or more of their monthly income on housing. For extremely low-income renters, we only have about 14 units for every 100 households who need one. That's the lowest in the nation by far. And where incomes have gone up, housing prices have gone up 2.5 times more. So we desperately need more housing. That's what Congress and this president should be focusing on. But instead, these tariffs on steel and aluminum, both of which come from Mexico and Canada, are working against us when we talk about the housing affordability crisis. Right now, the Las Vegas Valley is seeing anywhere from 10 to 15% increases in material costs, with some projections up to 25% in the coming weeks. That impacts budgets, it impacts timelines, and it impacts who will ultimately be able to afford a home. There's nothing political about a harmful policy. This isn't about right versus left, it's about right versus wrong. These blanket tariffs are wrong, and the president, Donald Trump, is wrong for enacting them. Nevadans deserve better, the American people deserve better, and that is why the Dads Caucus is here, because every dad, every parent in fact, deserves better when it comes to the country that we're leaving our children. So thank you to Chairman Gomez for your leadership, for bringing us together, and to my colleagues for making sure that we have this opportunity. And so now I will turn it over. I'm sorry, I didn't have the list. Okay.
No worries.
Apologies.
Oh, good. I'm Congressman Suhas Subramaniam. Thank you to Congressman Gomez and the entire Dads Caucus for organizing us today. And let me start by stating the obvious. These revenge tariffs make no sense and are going to make life harder and more expensive for working families on a budget. I'm a dad with 2 daughters, and hundreds of thousands of families across Virginia, like mine, are going to feel the devastating effects of these tariffs. Prices are up at the grocery store already, prices are up at the pharmacy, and prices are up at department stores. And my girls keep growing. It feels like they need new clothes every 2 months, and it gets expensive. But these tariffs are the largest peacetime tax increase in history. And who bears the brunt of this? It's the parents, it's the working moms and dads, and it's the families already stretched thin, barely making rent and putting food on the table. And many of those moms and dads own small businesses as well. Businesses like Mom's Apple Pie, a popular bakery in Loudoun County. And you know what ingredients and supplies are critical for bakeries to succeed? Eggs, aluminum foil. All these supplies are becoming increasingly expensive because of the president's actions. And it's not just Mom's Apple Pie. I've spoken to businesses across Virginia that are starting to lay off employees and increase prices on their customers because this administration has made it harder and more expensive to do business. These tariffs do not liberate anyone from anything but the money in their bank accounts. And we need to stop making the cost of living higher for families who are already struggling. So I ask my colleagues to join us in our fight for policies that put our children, families, and family-owned small businesses first. So let's push policies and that actually are pro-business and are actually pro-family, not these tariffs. Thank you. And I hand it over to Congressman Derek Tran.
Hi, good morning. I'm proud to be here with my fellow Dad Caucus members standing up for working families. I myself am a father of 3 young children under 9, and we are extremely worried about these Trump taxes. President Trump tariffs are just another example of the fact that this administration seems to have only one tool in their toolbox, a sledgehammer. Instead of fixing our schools, they dismantled the Department of Education. Instead of delivering better health care, they cut funding for Medicaid. And now, instead of investing in American industry, they impose reckless tariffs that will slow production and raise prices. Companies now face raising costs for parts and materials, making it harder to compete and forcing them to cut jobs or increase prices. Our national security industry, which employs thousands of people in and around my district in California, will be badly hurt. Tariffs on foreign parts are driving up production costs for crucial security systems, hurting our military readiness. If our leadership in defense technology lapses, America will leave our allies out in the cold, while authoritarian regimes gain more power. The facts are very clear. These reckless tariffs mean that Americans will face higher prices, fewer jobs, and a world that is less safe. I welcome my Republican colleagues to work with us to adopt a better policy that actually strengthens our economy and make Americans safer and more prosperous. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Derek. And one of the things I want to kind of highlight is some products that are mostly made outside the U.S. As a new dad of a toddler who's 2.5, 99% of all shoes are made outside the United States. On average, a kid, I didn't realize this, they grow out of their shoes so fast that you're constantly replacing them. So an average family will spend about $30 on a pair of shoes. If you go and you try to find like less expensive shoes, maybe you can get down to $15. But over a period of from age 1 to age 5, a family is spending anywhere from $300 to $800 on just shoes alone. Think about that, shoes alone during that 5-year period. That's for one kid. Samari and Derek each have 3 kids apiece, so just times that by 3. Growing up, we didn't have much. We do also, in my district, we do car seat giveaways because this is with nonprofits there because they know that car seats are very expensive. Almost all car seats are made outside the United States. So if we really start looking at how these tariffs are going to impact families with young kids, with the ones that keep growing and need to get their shoes replaced, get diapers every day. A diaper box, $45, right? And that's when you get 2 or 3 of those a month. So it's just going to get more and more expensive, and that's why we're here to talk about it. Also, coffee. Man, parents are going to be very cranky if they don't get their morning coffee. So this is what the real concern. And then what happens is people pull back, they exchange more expensive products for less expensive products, or they cut it out completely. You see revenue decline in small businesses. Those revenues that decline, you're going to have to, then those owners are going to have to decide, hey, do I pull back on hours, raise prices, or cut jobs or positions altogether? That's how we end up in a recession. And that's why we're here to really kind of emphasize that, because it's going to fall mainly disproportionately on people on the lower end of the economic ladder. So with that, if there's any questions to any member, go ahead.
To Congressman Horsford specifically, your district and your state relies very heavily on tourism, especially around the Las Vegas area. I was wondering if you could talk about what the recession back in the early 2000s looked like for a state that relies so heavily on tourism.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. A couple of things. In fact, last week I met with the head of travel and tourism for Southern Nevada and all the major properties to talk about the impact of the tariffs, but also this administration's erratic policies on immigration, specifically around visas. The impact in Canada, for example, is already seeing a decline, and about 25% of the visitors to Las Vegas, the international visitors to Las Vegas, are from Canada. And so, again, this president promised Nevadans when he campaigned that he was going to, lower costs, that he was going to focus on the economy, that he was going to help grow our industries. And in fact, the opposite is happening right now. Specifically to your question around what happened during the housing collapse in 2008 and the pandemic. Look, for the first time, the Strip in Las Vegas, the doors of our properties closed during the pandemic. That was also during Trump's presidency, the first time. And because he didn't take the responsible actions then, our city paid the price. But just think about that for a moment. Those were unavoidable events. This is a choice. This president decided, apparently with not a lot of advisors around him, to enact these erratic tariffs, misrepresent the trade war with certain countries, including our closest trading partners, Mexico and Canada. And because of that, Americans are going to pay the price. So yes, we are extremely concerned about how this will affect travel and tourism at a time when we thought we were back after the pandemic. I talk to hospitality workers all the time. So now they are worried if we go into a recession, will people stop traveling? And our city is known to be a place where people go even when there is a recession, but not if they can't afford basics like diapers, shoes for their kids, the basics. If they don't have that, there's no trip to Las Vegas.
Thanks, Mr. Gomez. Speaker Johnson has made clear as recently as yesterday that he supports Trump's policy. He trusts him to play this out over the course of the long game. And with that in mind, he's not going to put anything on the floor that would restore Congress's authority over trade and tariffs. There are Republicans, however, who support your position in the House and the Senate. Wondering if you were in discussions with any of them about forcing a vote via distrust petition or some other gimmick. We've seen those get 218 signatures recently.
Yeah, I think there are discussions, but one of the things we want to do is continue the pressure, because a lot of them are still not feeling the pressure from the constituents that they need to feel in order to vote their conscience and their districts against the Trump administration. So we're going to keep forcing this as an issue, and I think there are plans to have a vote on this, but it has to kind of percolate for a little bit. And as long as Trump keeps these tariffs in place, I think it's going to be, we're going to get more and more support. He announced an additional 50% tariffs on China if they don't respond by tomorrow. Well, there are some tariffs that have already been in place since his first term, and that Biden increased a little bit. You're going to see those probably go up to 200%. Think about it, 200% tariffs on some goods. So this is going to be, it's going to get really ugly and messy. And in my interpretation, being on two of the committees I'm on, China has been preparing for this trade war since the last Trump administration. They're not, and also, nations don't make decisions solely based on economics. They base it also on national pride. So people don't like to be bullied. Even our neighbors from the north don't like to be bullied. So we're going to keep up the pressure on the Republicans to get more. Because right now, I'm pretty sure if one of them speaks up, it's for political purposes, and they'll get slapped back into place by Trump or Elon Musk pretty quickly. So there's a safety in numbers, so it can't be one or two. It has to be at least a dozen for them to hold strong. Do you want to add something?
Thank you. So Representative Gomez and I serve on Ways and Means, which has jurisdiction over trade. And it is not in a recent event that Congress ceded its authority to the administration on trade. It's something that's been happening across time, but it's something we need to bring back. Our biggest challenge is that for the Republicans, they seem to believe that they serve at the pleasure of the president, that as long as they have Trump's trust, they have their office, forgetting that we serve at the pleasure of our constituents, the people who sent us here representing each of our districts. And as they look at the impact that these tariffs are having back at home, whether it is a rural community, farmers who depend on access to global markets to make ends meet, to cover their costs and achieve a little bit of a profit, or it's in urban communities where you're going to see factories shut down or already seeing layoffs in places like Stellantis announced a 900 person layoff. The pain is real, and it's only going to get worse. You look at the list, the products sitting on this table, every one of them is going to be more expensive. My coffee subscription, I got the email yesterday, went up not a little bit, went up 18%. All right, so someone mentioned that if you take away a parent's coffee, they're going to be cranky. I think everyone's going to be cranky as they see those prices rise. Until that pressure is applied to the representatives, saying this is not what we voted for. The election last November was about lowering costs, making it easier for families to make ends meet and get ahead. And what the president is doing is making it harder for families to feed their children, to provide their health care, to put the roof over their head. Until we see that pressure, I don't think we're going to see Speaker Johnson do anything that the president doesn't tell him to do. It's unfortunate. We'll continue to apply that pressure. We need Congress to retake its authority defined in the Constitution, and put us on a track that grows our economy, creates opportunities for the workers of the nation, but does in a way that gives us a chance to access markets around the world.
Anybody?
quick follow. As you mentioned, the effects have been pretty immediate. So how long do you anticipate that the pressure will take to build? Are we talking days, weeks, months?
Well, we are. I think it's the way it's going. It's probably going to take a few weeks. But I think a lot of these members are going back to their districts next week, and I think that people are going to get an earful about these tariffs. And also, there are individuals that are on the right that we disagree with them on almost every issue, from the guy from Barstool Sports to some of these really conservative commentators that were there for Trump and the Republicans and the MAGA movement. Now they're saying this is insane, right? They're not saying they're going to vote Democratic, but the more and more they're kind of bringing this up, maybe it will cause some of these Republicans to flip. People have to remember that the people we need to win over don't necessarily watch our cable shows, read our newspapers, go listen to our podcasts. So we have to go to them, but at the same time, when these figures in that right-wing blogosphere, alternative media start kind of turning on Trump, I think that's going to cause what the movement we need. Anything?
Markets just opened up about 300 points up from where it closed yesterday. What's your initial reaction?
Not surprised. I think that when people look at bargain basement prices when it comes to some companies, people are going to buy those stocks. My curiosity is what the stock market looks like when China and other countries start actually retaliating with their own tariffs and their own countermeasures.
And what's already been lost.
And what's already been lost. How is it 10 trillion? I forget what it is. And here's the thing. Trade wars, Trump always said, oh, they're easy to win. Yeah, except when the other side starts firing back, right? And I think that some countries are tired of it. Some are trying to stay out of the way, stay out of the crossfire. But I think in the end, you're going to see this thing escalate, unfortunately. And people are going to lose.
I'm going to add something on that, too. What Representative Horsford pointed to. We had a healthy economy at the end of 2024. The Economist had a cover in October that said the American economy was the envy of the world. We had lifted the entire global economy out of the doldrums from the pandemic. And the decisions that President Trump has made has taken a bull market that has been sustained over time, and in a matter of days turned it into a bear. As of yesterday, the NASDAQ, the S&P, and the Dow were all in bear territory. So what we're seeing is a pause. I think what you see the market doing is looking to see what is the next step. Is the president, the question everyone's asking is, are these tariffs permanent? Are they a negotiating tactic? The more increasingly apparent that the president sees these as permanent, as something that's going to be in our future, I think you're going to see that we stay in that bear territory. As companies have to make the hard decisions, are they going to invest in a new piece of equipment or a new line? Are they going to hire new people? Or are they going to have to hunker down because of the president's what I'll call irrational and capricious tariffs? I think you're going to see the economy in for a long run. So my hope is the president is convinced to change course, that Congress takes action and takes its responsibility back, and we can get the economy moving forward in a constructive way.
And the stock market isn't the only economic indicator, right? So what else are they looking at? There was a surveys by Moody's that said that there was more negative sentiment from corporations that the economy was going to get into a recession. That was the first time in years that's been the case, more negative than positive. Consumer confidence is down, right? So banks have just issued warnings. I think now we're at a 45% likelihood of a recession. Now 65? Well, now
JP Morgan,
yeah.
Chase said 60, Goldman said 45. If the tariffs are temporary, if they're permanent, they said we're in recession.
Yeah, so this is the stock market going up and down does fluctuate, but that costs people their retirement. But the little bit of spikes is not enough to offset what we're already seeing as a decline in economic growth, going into recession with higher inflation. You guys do the math. There's a term for that one. So with that, if there's any other questions?
Last question.
Last question? If not, thank you so much, everyone.